Thank you very much, and good evening and welcome to this meeting of Harrow's Planning Committee. Can I welcome to our virtual meeting, which is of course being held under current COVID-19 restrictions on public gatherings. I refer members and officers to the published protocols for holding virtual meetings, noting that members should have their videos, but to put the microphone on mute unless speaking. In the case of technical problems, the meeting will adjourn until resolved. If the member loses the connection, the meeting will be reconnected. If technical problems persist and the meeting is in quorum, the meeting will be abandoned to a later date. And I'd like to remind members to state when they're voting that they have heard all of the discussion and I vote to grant or refuse the application. This meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be available to watch and listen on the website. So item 1, attendance by reserve members. Are there any reserve members?
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, just on the previous item, I wanted to confirm the correct way to notify if someone has lost connection to avoid a repeat of what happened at the last meeting. How do we know which member has dropped out, if you know what I mean?
Well, the 2 IT officers will keep the video of all members and they'll be able to tell whether any member is disconnected or not. That's the purpose of keeping the video on at all times.
Okay, it's just that didn't quite work out properly last time, but okay, thank you.
No, but also the 2 IT officers will keep a list of the participants and they can see if anybody disappears. But if we had the same problem as we did last time, then we'll do it the same way as we did before. Okay, so I believe Councillor Robson is attending as a reserve member, is that correct?
Yes, sorry, Chair, I have my hand up to tell you that. I apologise, but left myself on mute, which is a novice's mistake. I apologise.
Okay, and Councillor Assad is attending as a reserve member, I believe, as well.
Yes, I'm also attending as a reserve member.
Okay, if we could all introduce ourselves. I'm Councillor Keith Ferry. I'm the chair of the Planning Committee. And Simon Brown.
Councillor Simon Brown.
I've heard from Christine Robson and Paymana Assad. And Christopher.
Councillor Christopher Baxter.
And Marilyn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Marilyn Ashton and I'm the Conservative spokesman on the Planning Committee.
And
Councillor Patel, I think you're thinking of asking to speak.
And if you introduce yourself.
I'm Councillor Ranjana Patel.
Okay.
Full member of the Planning
Item
Committee.
2 on the agenda is the right of members. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is right of members to speak. I haven't had any requests for any councillors to backbench. Declarations of interest are published on the website in the Declaration of Interest forms. Minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June 2020.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I filled out the form, I hadn't realised, but I have a suspicion that on one of the agenda items tonight, the applicant is Mr. Rishi Ani, And if it's the person I'm thinking of, the proprietor of Bombay Central, a restaurant that I rather like to eat at, I haven't been there since. We have a little chat sometimes, and so I'm going to declare a non-pecuniary interest in that. Thank you, Chair. If it's the right person.
Okay, it's noted. So we go back to the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June 2020. Can these be agreed and signed as a correct record? Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I've realised, and I do apologise if I've been remiss, there are 2 schools which are on the agenda this evening, and I do have the portfolio for Children's Services and Education, and one of the applications is being made by Harrow Local Authority. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we go back to the minutes. Is there anybody disagreeing with the minutes? I don't see anybody. So sorry, Marion.
Trying to be helpful. They're fine, Chair.
Okay, fine. They can be signed as a correct record at a later date. Item 5, public questions, none have been notified. Item 6, petitions, none have been notified. Item 7, deputations, none have been notified. And item 8, references from council and other committees and panels, none have been notified. There are addendums and supplemental addendums that have been issued. Are we happy to grant those?
Chair,
Yes.
just one minor point. When there's a second supplemental with additional information on this, but when we put the representatives on planning applications down, I think you'll find, particularly on agenda item 302, Mr. Shah is the applicant. I think it's incorrect to
Sorry,
say.
I didn't quite catch that.
Mr. Shah on agenda item 302.
That's item 302.
Is the applicant, I think. It's just that it's down as the objector. I don't think he is.
Okay, right.
He's correcting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Otherwise, we're happy to accept the addendums. I don't see any dissenters to that. And the arrangement of the agenda is normal. We will take items where we have applicants and objectors. So therefore, the first item will be item 205, 1 Cannons Park Close, followed by item 208, 442 Roxas Hill, and 209 land rear of 259 Pina Road, and 301 the Hive Football Centre. I think I've been informed by the Chief Planning Officer that they want to defer item 302 for further legal considerations. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair. Following briefing, we have taken further advice and we're requesting members to defer that item so we can consider the advice given in relation to the fallback position and the permitted development that the former house was entitled to implement. So in fairness to all parties, we're going to ask if we can defer that item and bring it back to committee at the end of September.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So we have 4 items where we have applicants and objectors,
Yes, Chairman,
and then we'll...
Chairman, I'm so sorry. So just to be clear, Mallory, agenda item 302, will not be determined tonight.
That's correct.
Correct.
And it's as regards the issue, which is why I called it in actually, as regards the fact that it is actually permitted development, the garage. Is that the issue?
The issue is the timing of when the works were undertaken versus the demolition of the original dwelling house and the rights that the original dwelling house had to implement permitted development. So we have sought, following briefing, we have sought legal advice and we are taking the opportunity to review that advice and report back accordingly.
Okay, as long as the objector, sorry, I think the applicant is fully aware that his agenda item will not be determined tonight. I would hate to think that he'd have to sit through the entire meeting only to find out that he's not going to have his agenda item looked at.
Yeah. Has he been informed, Beverly?
As the decision is one for the committee, as officers have asked you to defer it, we haven't yet informed the applicant. I understand he would be attending this meeting. We will nonetheless seek to, if he's not already joined, we'll seek to inform him now. If members agree.
Actually, I'm not terribly happy about it because it's fairly obvious that the garage was, for all intents and purposes, constructed before the house was demolished. So
that's the whole purpose of.
What can be a problem, you know?
The problem is that we've got to ascertain exactly when it was done, and we can't do that before this meeting this evening. And if the garage and outbuildings were constructed before the original house was demolished, as we had quite a discussion at the briefing on this, then he was entitled to erect the garage and the outbuilding under permitted development if the building was still up at the time that they were constructed. So officers have to confirm exactly what the timing was, and when they've done.
Officers intend to do that.
That's up to the officers to decide how they'll do that, possibly by talking to the neighbours, I'd imagine.
Talking to the neighbours?
How? How?
We will check. There are records that can be checked in terms of building notices submitted for works having commenced, and any photographic evidence that the applicant may in fact be able to help us with on that. So there are records that we can double check, but we needed to take that advice first, just to make sure our position, just to confirm what our position should be.
Well, we members of the committee, I don't know if everybody got it because there's 3 reserves, but those 4 members of the committee were sent today very clearly a photograph of the garage, which was, for all intents and purposes, in existence, albeit the roof hadn't been completely finished off and the garage doors weren't completely finished, with the house standing next to it. So that is that.
I think if officers have requested another 3 weeks to make sure that they've got all the evidence that they need, then I think it's fair to postpone it to the meeting at the end of September.
But haven't the officers seen that photograph?
Yeah.
Well, the officers obviously have to collect more evidence before they can be absolutely assured of the timing of the construction. I don't see any reason why we can't wait another 3 weeks to make sure that they're satisfied.
Well, I'm not very happy about that, so I'm not satisfied that it's necessary. I think it's obvious.
Do you want to take a vote?
Yes.
Do you want to take a vote on it then? Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, Chair, can I speak, please?
Yes.
I would just like to say that, I mean, didn't officer follow all the processes before? Why at the last minute now? And I think we discussed this as well before at the briefing as well. So I don't understand what is going on here and what evidence is officers looking for.
Well, that's up to officers to satisfy themselves that the timing of the construction of the garage was done whilst the building was still erected in its original form. So anyway, okay. You've asked for a vote, so I will vote for an adjournment of the item. Christine?
I will also vote for the adjournment.
Paymana?
I will also vote for the adjournment.
Simon?
I'll vote for the adjournment.
Marilyn?
I'll vote against the adjournment. Chair.
Christopher
I'll vote against, Chair.
and Jana.
I will vote against adjournment.
Okay, by my reckoning, that's 4 votes for the adjournment and 3 votes against. So that item is now adjourned till the next meeting of the Planning Committee.
Chair, if I may just say something, please, and I'll be very brief. We do have 2 members here tonight who weren't at the briefing, which puts them at a slight disadvantage. Did they have a briefing?
Why do you ask that question?
Because had they been at the briefing that we were all at, I know that you and Simon were there, to be fair. I think it might have slightly changed their opinion because of the questions that you yourself asked, Chairman, and frankly, I thought you were very astute. So I just wondered if they actually had a briefing at all.
Well, I'm not aware of that. Anyway, we have voted to adjourn that item, so we'll move on now. Representations have been received in several applications. Item 2051 Cannons Park Close, objector Mr. Chaniai, who won't be present and has asked for his statement to be read by me. Item 20842 Roxas Hill Harrow, objector Tina Hussain and the applicant Malakai Varja. Land Riru 259 Pina Road, objector Asif Mohammed and the applicant Sarah King, and the Hive Football Centre, the applicant Sean Mcgrath and the objector Jitendra Thakoria. And I apologise if I haven't pronounced anybody's name correctly. Are we happy to receive those applications? I don't see anybody dissenting from that. So for members of the public, each planning application will be discussed and considered by members of the committee. There will firstly be a presentation by officers on the application, following a period of questions from members of the committee. The objectors and applicants will then have 3 minutes each to address the committee, and then we will have comments and go to a vote on the recommendations. So if we could start with item 2051 Cannons Park Close.
Thank you, Chair. Can members please confirm they can see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
So the application site is located on the eastern side of Donneffield Avenue. The site itself adjoins the Grade 2 listed Cannons Park and Gardens, which is designated as Metropolitan Open Land and also part of the Cannons Park Conservation Area. Planning permission was granted in February 2020 for the construction of an additional floor to each of the wings of the subject building. The application proposes the same as that which was previously granted for an extension to each floor of the wing, but this proposal also seeks to provide an additional extension to the central block by approval of and 5 parking spaces would be proposed. The principle of the additional entrance is considered to be acceptable. In relation to character and appearance, this slide shows that the outline of the approved consent and the additional story proposed to the central block would be a modest addition and would replicate the architectural vernacular of the host building and serve to provide further articulation and relief in the built form. Officers therefore consider that the proposal would have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the host building and the locality. The application was also referred to the proposal subject to conditions. Officers would consider that the proposal would, against conditions, comply with the relevant policies in relation. The proposal is also considered to provide a satisfactory quality of accommodation for the future occupiers. And with regards to highway impacts,
I apologise for interrupting. Is it just me, or are others missing a lot of what Nebel is saying?
think I can understand everything he's saying, although the quality is a bit bad.
It is,
Yeah,
because I can't hear clearly either.
Yes. Okay. Perhaps if I
try again.
My video off. Is that any clearer?
Try it again.
Can you hear me clearer now?
Can't hear you at all at the moment.
No.
That was much clearer for me.
Seems to be less than a deal.
Can you hear me now, councillors? Is that any clearer?
Yes, that's much better.
Yes, it's much better. Thank you. I'm so sorry.
I think I might have to proceed without my video. Should I start the presentation again?
Yes, please.
So the application is located on the eastern side of Donnerfield Avenue. The site boundary adjoins Cannons Park, which is Grade 2 listed and is also considered as designated as Metropolitan Open Land and forms part of the Cannons Park Conservation Area. Members might recall that planning permission was granted in February of this year for an additional story to each of the wings of the subject building. So this application proposal incorporates the additional story to each of the wings, but also provides an additional story to the central block, thereby providing a total of 8 residential units and 5 parking spaces are proposed. In relation to the principle of development, officers are satisfied that the addition of smaller residential units would be acceptable. And in regards to character and appearance, this slide demonstrates that the additional mass proposed to the central block beyond that of the previous scheme would be a modest addition and would replicate the architectural vernacular of the host building and also serve to break up some of the mass and provide some relief visually. The application was referred to the council's conservation officer, who has raised no objection to the proposal subject to conditions. With regards to amenity, officers are satisfied that the proposal would provide a good quality of accommodation for future occupiers and also have an acceptable impact on the amenity of adjoining occupiers. And the application was referred to the Highways Authority, who have advised that the proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the safety and functioning of the highway and would not result in undue parking stress in the locality. The Planning Committee is therefore asked to agree the reasons for approval set out in the officer's report and to grant planning permission subject to conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the officer's report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions?
No.
No, I don't hear any questions. Mr. Chanyai cannot be present, but he asked me to read out his objective statement, which I have 3 minutes to do. And he says, I am writing for the objection of this 8 by 1 bedroom flats to be built on top of the existing flats numbers 1 to numbers 20. Noise and dust will come through on the roof of our flat during construction time. Our tenants refuse to live in the flat for inconvenience and bad health issues during the construction time. And what is the compensation that we are losing our tenants and rents, and for how long? How will the building be strong enough, as foundations were not built previously to hold so many flats? Shortage of car parking spaces in the street, as it is adjacent to a tube station, and it is too noisy for 28 flats instead of the original 20 flats on this building. Please note that my tenants had stated that they will serve notice and move out of the property if building work goes ahead. Therefore, I am worried that I won't be able to find another tenant due to the disruption of such a large construction and the length of time to complete it. And he said he's sorry, he's 80 years old man and would not be able to attend this meeting. Nevertheless, I am a pensioner and only rely on pensions and the rent income of this property for living, so who will be paying my lost income? In the meantime, I'm still confused of how can 8 flats be able to sit on top of flat number 19 and 20, and where is the space? That's from Mr. Cheney, who is the owner of flat 19, Cannons Park Close. I don't believe we have anybody from the applicant to respond to that. Therefore, we'll move on to discussing the merits. Does anybody wish to discuss? Okay, so if we move straight on to the vote, and I'll start off by saying that I have heard all of the discussion and I vote to grant the application.
Chairman,
Yes,
Chairman, sorry, you're going very quickly. We, with all due respect, don't give anyone a chance to even collect their thoughts. And I'd like to say a few words about this, please.
carry on.
I think, had I been on the committee when this the additional floors were granted, I might have taken exception to it. I can remember very many years ago, although I can't find it in the relevant history anywhere. I think it probably was during the time the council was hung, and Anne Whitehead was the chairman of the committee. But I can remember proposing refusal on extra floors at that time. And of course, we were in a very different world then. I don't know what happened. I just don't remember the outcome. But the point about this is that we've already granted permission for additional floors either side. Therefore, putting this extra floor on, and I agree with the case officer, almost certainly balances out the appearance of the building quite well. I think it's a shame that we've come to this only because of the views from the causeway on the Grade 2 listed park, and also, the fact that it's a metropolitan open land. That we do have to consider the long views and the character of the area. I'm quite surprised, frankly, that it was granted before with the additional floors all round. But nonetheless, I'm willing to accept this, except that I regret the fact that we are where we are, to be honest, Chair. I think it's a pity because the area is actually rather special. And I can appreciate why there have been quite a number of objections in response to the consultation. They really are quite interesting. There's one very keen observation from London Parks and Gardens Trust, who are very unkeen on this. So I understand that. But nonetheless, I think it is very pragmatic to just accept the fact that it is what it is and move forward from there. And thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Is there anything from anybody else?
No.
No? Okay, if we can move to the vote then. I've heard all of the discussions and I vote to grant this application. Simon?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant the application.
And Christine?
I also vote to grant it.
And you've heard all the discussions?
I have.
Good. Paymana?
I've read all the paperwork.
I vote to grant it and I've had all the discussions.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant it.
And Christopher?
Councillor Christopher Baxter, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant.
Okay, so that application for Cannons Park Close is granted unanimously, and we move on to 208-42 Roxeth Hill.
I will be presenting that case. I'll just open up the presentation. Can members all see the screen?
Not at the moment.
No.
No.
Okay.
Now we can.
Yes, we can.
Yeah. I think that's the wrong screen. Just bear with me 1 second. Can everybody see the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. So this relates to 42 Roxeth Hill. There is an addendum item which clarifies the key differences between the previous refused applications and the current scheme. The current proposal has been amended since these applications to generally reduce the height and depth of the extension. The application site is located on Roxeth Hill and is occupied by a 2-storey semi-detached dwelling house. The surrounding area is mainly residential, and the adjacent neighbours are number 40, the non-adjoining neighbour, and number 44, which is the adjoining semi-detached property. The site is located within the Roxeth Hill Conservation Area. The application seeks planning permission to replace the existing conservatory with a single-storey rear extension. One objection has been received from the non-adjoining neighbour, number 40, concerns relating primarily to the loss of outlook and sunlight. In terms of the character and appearance, the proposed development would complement the existing dwelling and would use similar materials to that of the existing property. It would be approximately 0.3 metres higher and 0.4 metres deeper than the existing conservatory, which is mostly hidden with the gradient which slopes downwards in the rear garden. Conservation officers are satisfied that the proposal preserves the character of the Roxeth Hill Conservation Area. An objection has been received in relation to the impact to number 40 Roxeth Hill. There were 2 previously refused applications for a single-storey rear extension. The first was refused due to the loss of outlook and overbearing impacts to the rear protected windows of numbers 40 and 44 Roxeth Hill. The second application reduced the depth of the extension from 4 to 3.5 metres and a maximum height from 3.7 to 3.3 metres. And as a result, it was not considered that the proposal would result in an impact to number 40 Roxeth Hill. It was therefore refused solely on the impact to the adjoining neighbour at number 44. The current proposal reduces the depth further to 3.3 metres, which is compliant with the council's SPD. No windows are proposed in the flank elevations, and the proposed development is set sufficiently away from the common boundary with number 40, which is 0.9 metres. It will not project more than 3 metres from the neighbouring rear windows, and the height is not unreasonable due to the gradient of the property. Officers do not therefore consider that the proposal would result in detrimental impact to daylight outlook or overbearing impacts to either neighbouring property. Members are therefore requested to grant planning permission for this proposal, subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Selina. Are there any questions? Marilyn?
Just for clarity, isn't the current proposal for 3 metres and the previous one 3.5, not 3.3?
Yes, 3.5 metres in depth, yeah.
Yeah, you said 3.3. I just want to be clear. That's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't hear any. Could we hear from Tina Hussain?
Yes, hi, hello.
Hello, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, so my objection focuses on the reason for the proposal being refused in the previous 2 applications, as stated by the case officer Blythe Smith. The development would give rise to a loss of outlook and overbearing impacts to the rear protected windows and amenity space of my property number 40. Nothing has changed in relation to the position of my windows. Therefore, any construction that is not the exact same dimension or design, i.e. sloping roof, as the existing conservatory would severely affect the outlook from my property that has stood here since it was constructed in 1902. There are no other extensions of this kind along the row of neighbours, although a 3 metre design was approved previously at number 40, but this would have had no impact to their neighbours in the way the proposal would mine. The extension at number 50 was never built. I do not have any objections to number 42 rebuilding the conservatory in brick with a single roof to enhance their property and quality of life, but any construction larger would be of detriment to my property, outlook and quality of my life. Did you hear that?
Chair, you're on mute.
Yes, but the chairman's on mute.
Oh,
Sorry. Thank you very much, Tina, for that. Have we got the applicant, Malako Vaja?
Yes, I'm here.
You have 3 minutes as well.
Yes, yeah. As Miss Selina Hotmani has mentioned clearly that the current proposal has been reduced by 0.5 meters. So we are seeking planning permission for only 3 meters as opposed to 3.5 meters. Even when the application was made for a 3.5 meters rear extension, it would have had no detrimental effect on number 40, who is the non-adjoining neighbor, because the ground levels are similar. Effectively, after the extension, there would still be a gap of about 2 meters between the protected window of number 40 and the flank wall of the new rear extension. So it would, even like these kind of 3 meters rear extension are allowed under permitted development even for terrace properties, which would have no impact on the neighbors, adjoining neighbors, and number 40 is a non-adjoining neighbor. So I don't feel that it would have any sort of negative or any impact at all than what it currently has. The flat roof extension which has been designed is also marginally more than what where the flat roof adjoins the existing rear wall of the property. It starts from where the current existing height of the conservatory is, so it doesn't impact drastically where the flat roof extension meets the existing property. But due to the sloping nature of the site, the height at the rearmost end of the garden where the extension finishes, it would be 3.2 meters. But 3 meters is the height which the council still allow under permitted development or under planning permission. So it would not have any impact of this 3 meters extension on the non-adjoining neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments from members of the committee? Marilyn?
Yes, so thank you, Chair. I think it's probably not the point, although I'm not disputing it, that the previous proposal actually wasn't suggested in the reason for refusal that would have a detrimental impact on the property of the person that who just made a representation. I think. Sorry, can you not hear me? Is that right? It's just that Councillor Roberson's busy shaking her head like that. And I thought you couldn't hear me. What I think, Chair, is that this is a conservation area, and there is no question, to my mind, that the amount that this differs from the previous proposal isn't enough to ameliorate and remedy the concern that it will still have an impact, as has been suggested in the January refusal, on the neighbour on the other side. We're not dealing with an ordinary road here. We're not dealing with a house that could build this under permitted development. We're dealing here with a conservation area that has a very effective and very well written appraisal. And I'm in no doubt, and if I'm right in saying half a metre is about that much, I don't think that much actually solves the problem here, because the rest of it, in fact, it's from the January proposal. It's slightly higher, but only de minimis, and the rest of the measurements are identical. So, if this wasn't acceptable in January, and it's only that much smaller in depth, I would say that it's still not acceptable. And so, Chair, without further ado, I'm going to propose refusal. The proposed extension, by reason of its height and scale, would appear to be visually obtrusive and would give rise to a loss of outlook and overbearing impact to the rear protected windows and amenity of space of 44 Roxeth Hill, thereby doing harm to the amenities of the neighbouring property, contrary to policies 7.4 and 7.6 of the London Plan 2016, D1 of the Draft London Plan 2019, and would not preserve or enhance the character and appearance of the Roxeth Hill Conservation Area, contrary to the Roxeth Hill Character Appraisal and Management Strategy. And Chair, that was an element that was missing, interestingly, wrongly in my view, from the previous reason for refusal. And also the previous reason for refusal doesn't appear to have any policies that it was contrary to. And so it's just as well that didn't end up at the inspectorate, but it didn't. And in fact, none of these have been tested with a higher authority. And so, Chairman, I'm proposing refusal. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have a seconder? Christopher, are you seconding?
Chairman, I agree with what Councillor Ashton has said regarding the conservation area and the character, and I'd like to second her motion for refusal.
Okay, does anybody else wish to speak? No, so we have a motion for refusal. I'll go first. I've heard all of the discussions and I vote not to refuse the application. Simon.
I've heard all the discussions and I vote not to refuse.
Christine.
Is that the right way around?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and I vote similarly not to refuse.
And Jana? All right. I was calling Anjana to, because I can see her on the screen.
I've heard all the discussion and I support the refusal.
Christopher?
We've done
Councillor
Christopher.
Banister, I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Marilyn?
I have heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
And Paymana?
I've had all the discussions and I vote not to refuse.
Okay, so by my reckoning, that motion fails and we move on to the application itself. I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve the application. Simon?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve the application.
Christine?
I've heard all the discussions and vote to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Paymana?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve. And could all this please be recorded? Thank you.
Did you say you vote to approve?
I vote to refuse, sorry.
Okay. Christopher?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse, Chair.
And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Okay, so by my calculations, that is a majority of 4 to 3 for approval of the application. And we move on to item 209, land rear of 259 Pina Road.
And members, I will be presenting this case as well. Can everybody see my screen?
You can, yes.
Okay, so this proposal relates to a land rear of 259 Pina Road. There are 2 addendum items. The first is the wording of the recommendation A, which has been updated for clarification purposes. And item 2 is an additional condition to remove PD rights to prevent the property from being able to add additional stories under the new permitted development rules, which came into effect in August. So that's been added. The application site relates to a small parcel of land. It's currently vacant and was formerly used as car parking for the Apollo Public House. The subject site is located within a mixed commercial, retail and residential area. Directly to the north is Tesco Express, including its associated car parking, and 2 residential properties are above. To the east is an MOT service and garage. The site adjoins to the south an access path which leads to the rear of number 275 Pina Road, which separates the site from the railway line. And to the west is 273 Pina Road. And to the rear of that, in the garden, is Tunnel Lounge, which abuts the shared boundary with the site. The site is not in a conservation area and it's a PTEL 3 in terms of public transport accessibility. These are some site photos, so you can see the Tesco Express, the Shisha Lounge at 273 Pina Road, and some nearby flatted developments northwest of the site. The proposal seeks redevelopment to provide a Part 2, Part 3 story building comprising of 7 flats. 3 objections have been noted in relation to character and appearance, amenity, lack of car parking, and amenity for future occupiers. The site is considered to be previously developed vacant plot of land. There are no specific development plan policies precluding the site for residential use. The proposal would contribute to the borough's housing stock. In terms of policy H2 of the draft London plan, this supports a newly designed homes on small sites such as this and reinforces the need for small sites to contribute to meeting the London housing need. In terms of character and appearance, Pina Road and the gardens are varied in character, and the site itself is not highly visible as it is set back from the surrounding main roads. Whilst it is noted that the Pina Road is characterised by 2-storey dwelling houses, this side of Pina Road and the gardens is mixed in character, so the modern design would be appropriate in this context. The 2-storey, Part 3-storey building is in keeping with the scale of nearby flatted developments, namely Asian Court and Katecha House. And the building itself is set in by at least 4 to 5 metres from all boundaries, which ensures that it sits comfortably within the site. The nearest properties to the development are the first floor level above Tesco Express. These properties are located 15 metres away, which is considered acceptable. An objection was received in terms of the loss of privacy to number 273 Pina Road. However, the nearest rear-facing window to this property is over 25 metres northwest of the site and at an oblique angle, and therefore would not cause direct overlooking or cause detrimental harm in terms of daylight or outlook. For future occupiers, the proposal comprises a mix of high quality amenity spaces and would meet or exceed minimum London Plan standards and is considered to be acceptable. In terms of highways, officers have considered the availability of public transport to be good within the vicinity, and the agreement of the applicant to enter into a legal agreement to restrict parking permits in the surrounding CPZ facilitates the car-free development and is considered acceptable. Members are therefore asked to grant planning permission subject to conditions outlined in the report and permit restrictions subject of legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? I can't see any. So can I
Sorry, Chair, forgive me. It's not a question. May I make it just a comment?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. My comment is only my knowledge of this particular area. I'm thinking about street lighting, which is not, I know, a germane planning consideration, but just something that comes to my mind in terms of accessibility. But I have no objection other than to just make that comment. Thank you.
Okay. Could I invite Asif Mohammed to address us for 3 minutes? Don't know if Asif is with us. No. In which case I'll have to find his statement. We haven't managed to find him yet, have we?
Chair, may I speak? Sorry, this is legal. Perhaps we should check with IT whether he's in the lobby.
Okay, good.
Hi, Councillor. Yeah, no one waiting in the lobby, I'm afraid.
Okay, bear with me for a minute. Right, I have his statement here. I am a resident of 273 Pina Road, and I would like to raise my objections to the plans for building a 3-storey building comprising of 7 flats on the land to the rear of 259 Pina Road. The building will be directly in my line of sight from my bedroom window, and my privacy will be severely compromised. The building will block out a lot of the light I receive, which is unacceptable. I currently have rat problems for being so near to the railway line. Building works for these flats will disrupt the current environment and force the rats even closer to my property. If established, the rubbish collection from these flats will bring more rodents, causing a worse infestation in the area. The modern design of a new building will also devalue the 1930s housing style in the area. This is not an ideal location to create new homes due to the railway line and Tesco deliveries nearby. These properties will be even closer to the railway line and delivery space, and so the noise will be even more prevalent for the occupants of these properties than it is for myself. The plans claim that they will put the maximum thickness of glass allowed, but due to the level of noise from the surrounding areas, this will not be enough. The proposed balconies also overlook the railway and shops. not ideal surroundings for residential flats. Although no car parking spots will be allocated to the residents, we would expect to have some cars and need to park them, as well as visitors arriving with cars. Parking is already a struggle in the area and worse at the weekends. This new proposal is poorly thought out because it doesn't uphold the best interests of future occupiers. This seems like a desperate proposal and which is purely an investment for profit. This build has been declined twice before. I'm hoping Harrow Council will think about its current residents and support the local businesses in the area. These local businesses bring money to the council and help to reduce crime and other issues. A shop, cash and carry, which has already had planning approval, is much better suited for this land. It would also bring in much needed jobs to the local area. Finally, please note that the access point to build and enter the flats will be adjacent to the railway line. This land is owned by Lift and Engineering Services Limited, 275 Pina Road, Harrow. Permission should be requested if this access point can be used, as they control the entrance to exit gate. That concludes the statement from Asif Mohammed. Is Sarah King, the applicant, available?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Thank you. If you'd like to address us for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and members of the committee for the opportunity to speak in support of this application. Your officer's report sets out a balanced and professional appraisal of the planning issues and includes a clear recommendation for approval, and I do hope that you will feel able to agree with your officer's conclusions and approve the application, subject to the Section 106 and planning conditions. We've worked tirelessly with your officer since submission in October of last year, with several amendments and technical reports having been submitted to ensure that the scheme is acceptable. In order to assist your consideration of the application, I'd like to highlight a few main points. The site comprises a vacant parcel of previously developed land within the built-up area and close to a range of shops, services and facilities. The proposal is to construct a flatted building providing 7 flats over 3 floors. And in terms of design, the building would have a contemporary, high quality appearance which would be compatible with a generally mixed character of development in the area. The locality includes a number of flatted buildings along the Pina Road with a mix of architectural styles. And in respect of amenity and overlooking, the building has been designed to take into account the nature of the adjoining uses. The building would be located some 25 metres from number 273, which is sufficient to protect privacy to any occupiers and would not overlook any residential gardens. The separation distances proposed will provide and avoid any harmful impact upon residential amenity. Each proposed flat would have either a balcony or access to amenity space, offering residents access to sufficient amenity space. And just to add that one of the changes made to the application was to provide enclosed balconies to the rear elevation of the building. In terms of noise from adjoining uses, great effort has been put into designing and specifying a suitable design solution to ensure occupiers will have an acceptable residential environment. Subject to compliance with the submitted details and the imposition of further conditions, the Council's Environmental Health Officer has not raised any objection to the application. As set out in the officer's report, the scheme is car-free and the applicant has commenced work on the Section 106 to ensure future occupiers are not eligible for a parking permit. The site lies in an accessible location where future occupiers will reasonably be able to cycle and use public transport to meet their daily needs. In such locations, this level of provision is acceptable and no objections have been raised by the highway officer. The letters of objection are noted and the officer's report has considered these in full. The officer concludes that the proposal is acceptable. We believe that the proposal complies with the relevant planning policies and that the application before you is acceptable. We consider that the proposal will provide flats in a highly accessible location and will not give rise to any acceptable concerns. I do hope that you will feel able to support your officer's clear recommendation to approve the application. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to assist. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any comments from members of the committee? Marilyn.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I have to say that I thought the statement from the objector, although I didn't agree with all of it, was partly right insofar as I agree that this development won't provide the most ideal dwelling conditions for future occupiers. And I agree with that. I think that's correct. But Chair, I don't think that this is refusable either. Not in terms of policy. And I think that on balance, this is almost certainly something that we are going to have to put up with. But I don't personally think it's going to be an ideal outcome for future occupiers. And I can't, with respect, to the applicant, I do apologise, but I can't honestly say that I'm enthusiastic about this proposal. And I think that the kind of measures that are necessary to make this habitable are of the sort that it's got all the hallmarks of problematic written all over it. But at the end of the day, it will be up to those people who end up living there to decide for themselves whether or not it's tolerable. So it will be as it presents itself at the time that it's marketed or let out. So, Chair, I won't be getting in its way, but I have to say I'm slightly disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I don't see any. Therefore, if we could move to the vote, I'll start off. I've heard all of the discussions and I vote to approve this application. Simon?
I've heard all of the discussions and I vote to approve.
Christine?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve.
And Paymana?
I've had all the discussions and I vote to approve.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussions and I'm abstaining.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain.
You've abstained?
Abstain, yeah.
Yep. And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I abstain.
Okay, if I hear that right, then we've got 4 votes for approval and 3 abstentions. In which case the application is granted. We move on to 301, the Hive Football Centre.
Good evening, members. I will be presenting this. I'll just bring up the presentation. Okay, just to draw members' attention to some addendum items for this proposal. This application is subject to the mayoral referral process, and officers are still currently awaiting to receive comments from the GLA on this. There has been a delay in getting this response. So our proposed recommendation is now to delegate authority to the Chief Planning Officer to determine this application, subject to the comments from the Greater London Authority, and to agree the reasons for refusal set out in the report. Just some brief other addendum items. Some additional comments were circulated prior to the committee, which were actually just missing from the report, concerning the sequential test and the need for the hotel on the site. This is essentially considering why the applicant has put a report forward to say why this is the most appropriate location for a hotel development, and essentially these additional comments conclude that the sequential test is unacceptable, both in terms of its scope and analysis, but notwithstanding that sequential test, in officers' view, the principle of the hotel is still unacceptable and in direct conflict with the site allocation. So the application comprises the Hive Football Centre, which is designated open space, and it's allocated for community outdoor sport. The subject site relates to the main area surrounding the existing stadium stands. The proposal seeks outline planning permission for access only for a building of 4 stories with a basement comprising a higher sporting education facility, a hotel and a medical diagnostic centre. So the proposed building would wrap around and infill the spaces between the existing stadium stands. It's indicated that there would be 150 bedrooms within the hotel. 106 of these are intended to be for conventional hotel use, with other bedrooms being directly linked to the medical diagnostic centre. In terms of the principle of the development, as outlined, the entire site is designated open space, and this proposed development would result in a direct loss of open space with no contribution to any further open space of higher value. Furthermore, the proposal would not constitute ancillary development, which is considered necessary to facilitate the functioning of the open space. In terms of the proposed hotel use, this is in direct conflict with national, regional and local policy by reason of it not being located within a town centre location, and is also in direct conflict with the site allocation. Similarly, the proposed football college and medical facility would also be inconsistent with the designated site allocation. This is just to give you a view of the indicative elevations of the proposed building. And here you can see the indicative ground floor layout. With regard to character and appearance, the application is not accompanied by a clearly defined parameters plan. However, in officers' opinion, based on the indicative elevations and height and floor space figures provided, it's considered that the proposal would detract from the open character of the site and the surroundings. With regard to impact on residential amenity, officers considered the proposal has the potential to generate significant noise and disturbance through the intensity of the use and additional nighttime light pollution. It is considered that the indicative massing in combination with potential light pollution impact would have the potential to be highly visually intrusive for adjoining neighbouring residents. The application is not accompanied by a transport assessment, so it has not been possible to conclude the acceptability in this regard for a development which could have a significant cumulative impact on the highway network. Similarly, the application is also not accompanied by other technical reports, including an ecological appraisal or flood risk assessment, and officers have therefore not been able to conclude the acceptability of the principal development in this respect. So in summary, the application is recommended for refusal on the basis of the principle of development and inappropriate uses on the application site. In respect of character, impact on amenity, transport and environmental issues, and the Planning Committee is asked to agree the reasons set out and delegate the authority to the Chief Planning Officer to determine the application, subject to receiving the GLA comments. Happy to take any questions.
Keith, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, I just can't understand why if that's come before the committee, we're delegating authority to the Chief Planning Officer to determine it.
So yeah, I mean the comments were expected last week, but unfortunately they've been delayed. So it is possible that we could delegate authority to Beverley in consultation with yourself.
Chair, the recommendation is based on committee members agreeing the reasons that are set out in the officer report. Should any new matters arise as a result of the feedback from the GLA, we would report back to committee.
Okay, that's clearer. Marilyn?
Chairman, that's cleared up what I was going to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I don't see any. So if I could invite Jitendra Thakorial to address us for 3 minutes, and apologise for probably mispronouncing your name. Is Jitendra available?
Hi, Councillor Ferry. Just to let you know that this person has not joined this evening.
Right. Not sure if Moim has sent me his. Let me see. Don't think I've got the objector's statement, unless Wim can tell me you sent it to me.
You didn't submit one, Chair.
Oh, well, I'm looking for something that doesn't exist then. Good. Okay, can I invite the applicant, Sean Mcgrath?
Hi, Chair, am I on?
I can hear you, yes.
Shall I crack on? Hi, Chair, councillors. There are 3 elements to this proposal. All 3 elements are intrinsically linked with the Hive. Firstly, there is the University College of Football Business. This is the first higher education institute to give degrees in the football industry. It is absolutely sensible that young people inspired to work in football are taught at a football stadium. This is why they already have campuses at Wembley, Manchester City and Burnley. Secondly, there is the Tic Health Facility. This will provide a new cancer screening centre with the best diagnostic facilities in Britain. These will be directly linked to the medical imaging centre that is already at the Hive and is used by NHS and private patients from all over London. Finally, there is a new hotel. Hotels are accepted as being appropriate at football stadia, and there are many, many examples. At the Hive, not only can supporters stay on site, but a new hotel will allow international teams training at the Hive to stay on site, children, parents and coaches visiting the football summer camps, they can stay on site, guests celebrating at the existing banqueting facilities can stay on site, and finally, up to 96 rooms will have medical bed spaces for the screening centre patients so that they don't have to travel. Furthermore, and importantly, it is well known that there are simply not enough hotel rooms in Harrow. In short, there are good reasons for these facilities to be at the Hive. However, as you heard, officers consider that there is a in principle objection because of the conflict with the Hive's open space designation. Officers are mistaken. All of the development is over existing roads and hard standing. Not a single blade of grass will be lost. My interpretation of policy is shared by the inspector who granted consent for the North Stand at appeal. She said that the North Stand was built on existing hard surfacing and there has been no reduction in the amount of open space. She concluded that there was no conflict with open space policies. This must be the correct interpretation of the policy, so I don't believe that there is an in-principle objection. However, I do appreciate that this is a major scheme, but there have only been 3 objections and there are significant benefits that will accrue. These include investment and new jobs in the borough, the provision of additional conferencing facilities for businesses, new opportunities for further education for young people, the delivery of a world-leading medical screening centre, a new hotel to meet demand and keep tourist spending in the borough, and all of these will be delivered in a landmark facility, a really impressive building. These are significant benefits for the loss of no open space. I do hope that you can support this application, but if you can see the benefits but think that we need to provide more information, you could decide to defer a decision to allow us to work with officers to work up a scheme that they can support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments? I can't see any. Because this is recommended.
Yes,
Marilyn has her hand up.
I had my hand up, but it's very difficult with virtual meetings, I know. If I may.
Yeah, your hand hasn't appeared on my screen, but carry on, Marilyn.
I was waving. I thought that was good enough, but there you go. Okay.
Yeah, but you're not on video, I don't think.
Well, I am. Yep, I am. I can see me.
See you.
Can anyone else see me?
I can see you,
Marilyn.
Marilyn. We can all see you.
Oh dear, it's enough to spoil the evening, really. Okay, can I speak, Chair?
Yes.
Right. Chair, look, I think the likelihood of the GLA disagreeing with these 8 sustainable reasons for refusal is remote. And no disrespect to the gentleman that just spoke. He's doing his job and I respect him for that. But I'm going to use a word that I don't often use. I think this application is vexatious. And I'm sorry. I've known the planning department for a long time, and I've had a lot of experience on planning matters over many years. And it's unusual for officers to come up with 8 reasons for refusal. 8. Now, I've gone over those reasons because, as you know, Chair, I like this subject and take a keen interest in it. I've gone over these reasons with a fine-tooth comb. And I'd say that out of the 8, 6 of them are incredibly compelling and really correct, and 2 of them are pretty good. So the point is this, Chair, that there is absolutely no way that this is anything but a non-starter. You know, we've got a site allocation map for a reason. I know this site exceptionally well. And when I first became the portfolio holder, there was grass growing out of a derelict stadium. And to give Barnet FC and Tony Cleanthers credit, they have made a very good job of bringing this area back to life and giving the people of Harrow, and young people particularly, opportunities that they would never have had without the investment. But for some reason, the ambition has gone a little bit over the top now, and we've ended up with this very inappropriate application. I know you've called it in, Chair, and I don't want to be disrespectful to you, and I do apologise. I think I probably was slightly at the last meeting, but I'm not quite sure what purpose it serves, to a certain extent, that is, when you have 8 reasons for refusal, when there is nothing about this that complies with any policy. But it's a matter for you, and we are where we are. And I trust that when the GLA come back and say, no way, Jose, that the officers will do almost certainly what this committee, hopefully anyway, will vote for them to do, and that is to carry on and proceed to refuse this application for the reasons that are suggested very ably, if I may say, in a very well written report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? As Marilyn said, I was the one that called this in, and as I pointed out before at the previous committee meeting, it just happens to be a fact that this is the first 2 items that we've called in under the new policy of looking at refusals are both at the Hive. I do believe that it's right for this committee to have a look at these things. The Hive itself has a long history of having planning permissions refused by the committee and then being overturned on appeal. I think we've had 5 refusals, and 5 times the planning inspectorate have disagreed with us. And this has cost both the applicant and the council an awful lot of money. And I would like to make sure that when we go down the appeal process, which we no doubt will, that we have had, as members of the committee, a chance to look at this. I do understand about the reasons for refusal that officers have given us, because some of those reasons are based on things which are at least 8 years out of date, which is the site allocations document that was produced in 2012, and lots of things in the borough and in the world have moved on since then. It is in the prerogative of the planning committee to look at the reasons for refusal and to then decide whether the benefit of any development outweighs the harm which is caused by that development. And that is the reason that I've called it in. So if there's no other comments, we can't tonight approve this application. We can only say that we are minded to approve the application, and then it would have to come back to a future meeting of the planning committee, because the recommendation is to refuse it. So if there's nobody else wants to comment, I'll go.
I had her hand up, Chair. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Your hand doesn't seem to be working. Anyway, carry on. Did you wish to speak, Marilyn?
It was, Chair, that Angela was waving at you.
I can't see. All right, Angela, I can't see your video.
I'm surprised because my video has been on all the time. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I also know the history of this application since it started, what Marilyn explained that many years ago. I find this proposal highly inappropriate. And talking about the hotel and hotel rooms, haven't we had a couple of hotels in the center of Harrow demolished in last few years? So that's what I would like to ask. So where is the demand for hotels here? Is a question that I ask, but I would just say that I find this proposal highly inappropriate in the place where it is suggested. Thank you.
Well, I can answer that because they're all in my ward. Comfort Inn Hotel has closed down. The Harrow Hotel has closed down, although that might just be over the border in Headstone South. And of course, we've had the Cumberland Hotel, which has closed down. All of the sites have been redeveloped. In the emerging London plan, the Mayor states that there is a deficiency of 50,000 hotel rooms in the capital. If you divide that by the 26 or 32 local authorities that there are in the capital, that means that we probably have a deficiency of about 1,000 hotel rooms at the present moment in Harrow. So, are there any other comments?
No, we don't actually. Sorry, I disagree with you, Chair, there, because otherwise it would not have happened, because I do know one of the hotel owner and I know exactly what they were saying. So sorry, I disagree with what you just said. There might be short of hotels in the centre of London, but definitely not here in Harrow. Thank you.
Well, I was just stating the fact that 3 hotels have closed, and I don't think anybody can disagree with that. Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself conflicted about this because I think that there are elements of the proposal which actually make me feel quite irritated because of the lack of presentations that there have been on the many factors that the planning team have notified us of or have identified. But at the same time, I feel that there is a need for some development. Harrow, you know, is in many ways becoming a dormer town where people, well, before COVID certainly, were travelling into London. And the idea of some more development within Harrow, there's something to be said for that. So I am actually going to abstain on this. I thought I would give you notice of that. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? I can't see any hands up or anybody waving on video. No. Okay, if we move to the vote then, I've heard all of the discussions and I am minded to approve this application. Simon.
I've heard all the discussions and I'm minded to approve also.
Christine.
Sorry, Councillor.
Yes.
If you're going against officer recommendation, you would have to pass a motion which has to be seconded.
Okay. I propose that this is that the officer's recommendations to refuse are overturned and we are minded to approve this application. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I can second that.
Right. So have I done it correctly now?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Right. Okay, in which case I've heard all of the discussions and I vote on the subject to minded to approve. Simon?
Yes, I've heard all the discussions and I'm minded to vote to approve.
Christine?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and I am minded to abstain. Thank you.
Paymana?
I've heard all the discussion. Sorry, can I just get a point of clarity on this? If I vote to approve, will this be coming back to the next planning meeting?
Yes, it does have to come back to the next planning committee because it then has to have the opportunity for any objectors to address us.
Okay, so then I've heard all the discussions and I am minded to approve.
Right, Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to refuse, along with the officer's recommendation of 8 reasons.
And Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. In line with the officer recommendation, I vote to refuse.
And Jana?
In line of officer's recommendation, I vote to refuse this application.
Okay, by my reckoning, we have 3 people that are minded to approve, 3 people that agree with the officer's recommendations for refusal, 1 abstention. Therefore, the chair has a casting vote, and I see no reason to change the way I voted, so I'm minded to approve. So the motion which has been proposed, seconded, is carried, and it will come back to a future committee meeting.
Chairman, first of all, it has to be very carefully minuted, and I don't think I envy when you have to have a conversation with some of your colleagues in that area.
I'm sure you're right, but I'm not too certain I understand what you said.
Yes, Deb.
Okay.
Chair, apologies, but could you just repeat the reasons as well?
For which?
For approving or minding to approve.
I don't think we have to give reasons. We don't have to give reasons for refusal.
No, because you're going against officer recommendation, you are required to give the reason why you're going against officer recommendation.
Well, the overriding reason is that I think the benefits that this project will give us far outweigh the 8 reasons for refusal and will be beneficial to the borough. That's the first reason. The second reason is that I believe that we ought to have a public debate. If this was refused by officers, it would go straight to appeal. And I know for one that the last appeal that we had to fight on this site cost us nearly £100,000 for the council. I'm trying to make sure that we're absolutely certain that we want to spend £100,000 fighting this appeal. Is that sufficient?
Yes, Chair. So I've got it down as benefits of the project will outweigh the reason for refusal.
Yeah, the benefits of the project outweigh the harm that will be caused.
Okay. Outweigh the harm. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So if we're all done on that item, can I propose that we have a short break? I think we've covered everything where the public is involved. I suggest we come back about 8:10. Not sure if we got Pina with us.
We haven't.
No. Well, it says Pina is an attendee. Are you there, Pina? We've got somebody that's phoned in on a number ending 367.
That's me and Brooks Money, Councillor Ferry, just because I was having problems with my system before. So
Okay.
we're reading that again.
Right, I can see Pina, so we're ready to go again. 201 Roger Banister Sports Centre.
Thank you, councillors. So the application site relates to the vehicular access, which is outlined in red here, which says the Roger Banister Sports Centre. The retrospective application is for the enlargement of the vehicle access, which increased the width of the access bell mouth by 2 meters and extended it a further 2 meters.
Oh, that's better. We couldn't see anything. Sorry.
The pictures on the slide show the existing works that have been carried out in relation to also the pre-existing car park here and access way to the Banister Sports Centre. So in terms of the principle of development, the laying of hard standing to formalise the enlargement of the vehicular access would constitute an engineering operation and therefore falls within the exceptions set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. On this basis, the proposal is not deemed to be inappropriate development on Green Belt terms. The enlarged vehicular crossover does not have a material impact on the character and appearance of the area or the residential amenities of adjoining occupiers. And the application is also referred to the council's highways officers who have advised that the proposal does not have a negative impact on the functioning or safety of the highway and is therefore considered to be acceptable. So for these reasons, members are requested to agree the reasons for approval as set out in the officer report and grant planning permission, subject to the conditions listed.
Okay, are there any questions? Are there any comments?
Yes, Chair.
Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I called this in, and it was very simple. There was one fundamental reason why. It's not that there is any intention of refusing it. It's not a terrible thing at all. What's wrong is the way the council is conducting its affairs. The council is the applicant. This is for a permanent widening of the access point to this site. And were this to be a private developer on a site like this, I can assure you that they'd be asked to make this good. Because the reason why this was done, and it was done without the benefit of planning permission, by the way, it was done, this is a retrospective application, so that doesn't set a very good example in the first place. But notwithstanding that, what I think should happen is that the council, just like other people in this on this planet and in this country, should be made to put or asked to put this back to how it was when the construction work on the site is completed. Because the reason to do this is because of the construction. So why it's a permanent permission, and we are the applicant, which otherwise I wouldn't couch it in these terms, is a mystery to me. And I would like to propose, Chair, that this is granted for 18 months from now, and then we'll see, rather than granted in perpetuity. Thank you.
Well, I think that's quite reasonable. Any other comments? We can move to the vote then. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant it for an initial period of 18 months.
Councillor Ferry, sorry to interrupt, but as is a condition limiting the permission, it should be seconded. So Councillor Ashton has, I take it, proposed it as a motion. It should be seconded and then put to vote with the new condition.
I'll second it, and we'll start again. I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to grant this application for an initial period of 18 months. Simon.
Yes, I've heard all the discussion on this and I vote to grant for an initial period of 18 months.
Christine.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. I've heard the discussion and I similarly would vote to grant, but for a period of 18 months. I think it's a very thoughtful suggestion.
So, Paymana.
I've heard all the discussions and I vote to grant for an initial period of 18 months.
Marilyn.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant for an initial period of 18 months.
Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is the right thing to do. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant for a limited period of 18 months.
And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to grant for the initial period of 18 months.
Good. So that is granted for an initial period of 18 months and that is unanimous. So we move on to 202 Pina Park Primary School.
So this case relates to Pina Park Primary School. An addendum has been submitted in relation to the case to change the applicant name to Harrow Council under Regulation 3. The site consists of 2 educational buildings, the infant and nursery schools and the junior school. The proposal involves the construction of a single-storey linked extension to facilitate a corridor between the infant and junior school, which would form part of an enlarged reception area. No consultation objections have been received. The proposed extension would provide additional circulation space for the school to avoid reducing the sizes of the classrooms and is in compliance with policies DM46 and DM47 of the Council's Development Management Policies document. In terms of character and appearance, the proposal would be modest in size and would be sited between 2 existing buildings. It would be modest in terms of its scale and would be predominantly glazed with a finish similar to that of the existing building. The proposal would be subordinate to the main buildings and would not be highly visible or obtrusive to its surrounding environment and therefore would not have an impact to the surrounding residential occupiers. As such, the committee is requested to grant planning permission subject to the conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the officer's report.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Are there any comments? Christine.
Thank you, Chair. As I stated at the beginning of the meeting, I do have the portfolio for education. I don't think that precludes me from voting on this, but it does enable me to make what I think is a useful comment, which is that I think that this is a valuable contribution to the development of the school as it becomes a through school. So actually it's enhancing the school life of the pupils. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? I don't see any, so we move to the vote. I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to approve the application. Simon.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion. I vote to approve this application.
Paymana.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Marilyn.
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Christopher?
Thank you. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Anjana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application.
So that application at Pina Park Primary School is approved unanimously. And we move on to 203, street record, Elizabeth Gardens, Stonewall.
Thank you, Councillor. By way of the addendum updates, there have been additional objections received since the original agenda was published. We've also received confirmation of the land registry document confirming the correct development notice was serviced and served, sorry. So the application site relates to a grass verge and pedestrian pavement, which is between Elizabeth Gardens and Marsh Lane. The proposal is for the installation of a 20-metre high monopole with associated cabinets to provide 5G telecommunications technology, and the application has been made under Part 16 of the Town and Country General Permitted Development Order. So by way of public benefit, the proposal would provide 5G coverage to an area which has been identified as a coverage hole by the operator, and this does accord with the NPPF guidance, which highlights the importance of high quality communication infrastructure. The supporting information with the application detailed that it wouldn't be possible to use existing base stations in the vicinity, and 5G technology does require monopoles to have a minimum height of 20 meters in order to operate. Although tall, the monopole would be screened to a degree by the tree coverage along Marsh Lane, and there are also other telecommunication apparatus already installed within the vicinity. So despite its height, the monopole would be relatively slim in profile, and taken together with the other factors mentioned would in addition to decisions that have been allowed on appeal by inspectors recently, be considered to be mitigating factors to offset the visual harm of the proposed monopole. Other alternative sites were considered within the locality, but it was deemed that those would have a more harmful impact because of the absence of tree coverage and other telecommunications apparatus in the locality. So officers consider that on balance, the identified harm to the character and the appearance would be outweighed by the principal public benefit, which would be provided by the provision of the 5G technology to the area. Members are therefore requested to grant prior approval of details in siting and appearance for the development as described in the application and submitted plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Marilyn?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, 70 foot, I like to do old money because it makes it a little clearer to a lot of people watching this how massive these things need to be, is a very great height. And the reason why, and I was actually doing quite a bit of research on this, and I don't mean reading a whole load of bonkers stuff that people write about this. I'm talking about the science behind this. The reason why they have to be 70 foot high is because if they're not, they can't be there because they could have a detrimental effect on people's health. So the reason why they have to be whacking great big things like this is because of the science, and the World Health Organization particularly has a bit to say on it. Now, I don't have a problem with this technology. We all use our phones. We all want to be connected, and it's essential in this day and age. The problem is that this particular site is in a built-up residential area. And as you can see, when you looked at the slides that were shown just before, there are people living within reasonably close proximity to this huge installation. I actually called this in because I've been keeping a watching brief on all of these telecommunication masts, and nearly all of them have been refused. This is one that is not been recommended for refusal. it's been recommended for grant. So I was slightly concerned because I thought, well, it's not really a very appropriate site at all. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of objections to it. And to be honest, if I live nearby, it's not being NIMBY. Frankly, it's being concerned, and rightly so, about this. And so, Chair, without further ado, I'm going to propose refusal. The proposed telecommunication mast, by reason of its excessive height and noticeable location, would be visually obtrusive in the street scene to the detriment of the visual amenities and character and appearance of the area, contrary to policy DM1 and DM49 of the Harrow Development Management Policies Local Plan 2013. Thank you.
And Jana, do you wish to second that?
Yes, I would like to second that, please, Chair. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to comment? So we have a motion to refuse this. I'll start off by saying that I've heard all of the discussion and I disagree with the motion to refuse. Simon.
Yes, I've heard all of the discussions and likewise I disagree with the motion to refuse.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I disagree with the motion to refuse.
And Jana? Sorry, Paymana.
I've heard all the discussions and I disagree with the motion to refuse.
Marilyn?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain. I'm abstaining.
And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to refuse this application. And I just want to say one more thing. I am really surprised that up till now, all of them has been refused and that this particular one has been granted by the officer. Thank you.
Well, I think you'll see at the end of the committee papers that all of the refusals that have gone to appeal so far have been granted. I say all, but certainly the two which are the subject of the papers that we've got before us. So anyway, I conclude therefore that the motion to refuse has failed and we can vote on the application itself. I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to agree the application.
Yes, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application.
And Christine?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to agree the application.
Paymana?
I've had all the discussion and I vote to agree the application, pass the application.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussion, I vote to refuse.
Christopher?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to abstain or abstain.
And Jana?
I've heard all the discussion and I refuse the application.
So we have 4 votes to approve the application, 2 votes to refuse the application, 1 abstention. So that application is approved. And we move on to 204 Now Hill High School.
So this case is a No Hill High School. The addendum for this application has been removed as the applicant name does not need to be corrected. The main school buildings are clustered to the south of the site between the main entrance on George V Avenue and service entrance on Pina Road. The playing field to the north of the main school buildings is bounded by a sports hall, which is subject of this application. The proposal seeks planning permission for the construction of a single-storey side and front extension to the sports hall building. No objections have been received. The proposed development is located within a designated open space. Policy DM 18 of the Development Management Policies Local Plan seeks to protect open space However, proposals for ancillary development on designated open space are supported when the proposal would be ancillary to the use of the open space, would be of an appropriate scale, and where it would be ancillary to the use of the host building. The proposed extension would be to the existing sports building, would be appropriate in scale, and would not detract from the open character of the site or its surroundings. In terms of character and appearance, the development would be sited within the middle of the school complex, and being single story would not exceed the heights of the surrounding buildings. The proposal would be of a scale which is subordinate to the main buildings, and due to its siting in the middle of the main complex would not appear discordant or obtrusive in its surrounding environment. The Conservation Officer has raised no objection. Similarly, due to its siting and modest design, it is unlikely to have a detrimental impact on neighbouring occupiers. As such, the committee are requested to grant planning permission subject to conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? I can't see any. Are there any comments? Christine.
Thank you, Chair. As before, just to mention that I've got the portfolio for education, again, I do not think it makes any difference, but I'm going to say it anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, if we can move to the vote then. I've heard all of the discussions and I vote to approve this application. Simon.
I've heard all of the discussions and I vote to approve the application.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve the application.
Paymana.
I've heard all the discussions and I approve the application.
Marilyn.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussions and I vote to approve. Thank you.
Christopher.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application.
And Anjana.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application.
So that application is approved and that's unanimous. And we move on to item 206, 350 High Road, Harrow, HA3.
So the subject site is a two-storey end of terrace building with commercial uses on the ground floor. The application proposes to extend and convert the underused storage area on the upper first and second floor into 8 flats. The proposal comprises 2 dormers on the front elevation and a first floor rear extension. In addition, a rear box dormer is also proposed. The proposed extensions and alterations are considered to have an acceptable impact on the surrounding area and would comply with the Council's residential design guide. The proposal would have an acceptable impact on the residential amenities of the future occupiers and neighbouring occupiers. No parking is proposed with the development, but it is accepted that the location is acceptable in terms of public transport accessibility. The application was accompanied by parking surveys, which demonstrates there are streets with lower parking stress levels. And on this basis, that it's a fairly modest proposal, it's not considered to result in any significant overspill parking. And the Council's Highways Authority have raised no objection. So the proposal is recommended for approval subject to conditions set out in the report. Any questions?
Any questions? Can't see anybody.
Sorry, can I just ask one question?
Yeah, certainly, Pamela.
In terms of the flats, the 8 proposed flats, in the space in the flats, is that within the legislated sort of metrics in terms of what the square foot of the floor plan would be in each apartment?
Sure, yeah, all the flats are in accordance with the London Plan standards.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any comments?
Just very briefly, Chair. May, thank you, Chair. Simply that, you know, the papers which I have read still refer to Waitrose and Iceland, you know, which don't exist anymore.
What?
Don't they?
Is that right?
No.
Where we are?
No.
We're in Harrow Wheels. I don't know where you are.
Yeah.
Christine, with all due respect, I don't think you know where this is.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
I do apologise. I thought it had been moved over by Lidl. I apologise.
That's home base. That was home base.
Right, and Waitrose is Lidl now. Excellent. I don't ever shop in that one, so I do apologise. I do know where it is. I just shifted it along a bit. Thank you very much, Marilyn.
I think you're not totally incorrect, Christine, because I've heard that there is possibly a redevelopment of the Waitrose site coming up sometime in the next few months or so.
I thought there were certainly plans to close both it and Iceland, overwhelmed by Lidl. Yeah.
Waitrose is there at the moment, and
Right,
and
thank
plans for the redevelopment that I've seen include a smaller Waitrose, but
right.
Perhaps you'll foresee in the future, which is a
Sadly, yeah.
great help to us, I'm sure.
Thank you for that information.
Okay, if we move to the vote, then I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to approve the application. Simon?
Yes, I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to approve.
Christine?
Thank you. I've heard all the discussion and your tolerance of my geography, and I do vote to approve. Thank you.
Good. Pamana?
I vote to approve.
Marilyn?
I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Christopher?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
And Jana?
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve.
Thank you. So that's approved and that's unanimous. If we move on to item 207, Hermitage Gate, Clamp Hill, this was considered by last month's or the last planning committee, which was in July, I believe, and it was an application which the officers recommended for refusal, and the committee disagreed with the officers' reasons for refusal. It therefore has come back to us. So unless anybody has got any desire to have this represented, I think I would just move on to any questions that anybody might have. Yeah.
Please forgive me. I don't think that two members, namely Councillor Robson, who has read all the papers, I'm sure, because she's very diligent, and Councillor Azad, had a briefing. I do think it's important that they get a presentation. If they haven't had a briefing, I don't know how they can vote to do anything on anything.
Okay, well, if you'd like to carry on with the briefing then.
Okay, so this application relates to the two-storey dwelling house at Clamp Hill, Stanmore. The application proposes a two-storey side-to-rear extension together with boundary treatment and a detached carport. This is the location of the extension here, showing existing proposed floor plans. The location of the boundary treatment along the frontage and the detached carport located to the front of the dwelling house here. The application was recommended for refusal at the previous committee on the basis that both the carport and the boundary treatment are considered to be inappropriate development in the green belt, and it doesn't fall within any of the exceptions within green belt policy. With regard to the extension, this was also a reason for refusal on the basis that it would give rise to disproportionate additions over and above the original dwelling house on the application site, which has previously been substantially extended. So they were the three principal reasons for refusal. The application was considered to be acceptable in terms of its impact on the locally listed building, subject to a condition requiring repair works. This was acceptable to the council's conservation officer, and there are no neighbours within the vicinity of the site, so there is no amenity impact. So it was on the basis of the impact for those three greenbelt issues. And so the committee was minded to approve the application, and it's been brought back with the following conditions recommended. So this relates to materials to match, as well as repair works in accordance with the submitted heritage statement, tree protection plans, and to ensure that the development is carried out in accordance with the approved plans. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, is there any questions?
Can I just ask what the timing is on it?
So that has to be, the development has to be carried out, has to be commenced within 3 years.
Okay.
Christine.
Thank you, Chair. My only concern was about the trees, in fact. It's good to know that there's going to be some thinking together about that. And that was my only area of hesitation, in fact. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any comments?
Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
Yes. Just to be clear, if we could just have a very short reason why it is being approved against officer recommendation, just for the record.
Okay, I'm sure Marilyn can give that.
Yes, I can, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to. The committee, well, it's not really this committee, it was actually the last committee, but unless we disagree with it, and I hope we don't, the committee is of the opinion that there will be no harm done to the character of the area, that the development is proportionate and appropriate and well designed, done tastefully, and also bringing back into good use a derelict house. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
And also there was some reference to the minutes of the meeting in July, so there may be other reasons there as well. Are there any other comments? Now, if we move to the vote then, I've heard all of the discussion and I vote to agree or rather approve the recommendation.
Yes, I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the recommendation.
And
also, Chair, yeah. Shall I simply?
Christine.
I've heard the discussion and I vote to approve the application. Thank you.
And Pimana.
I've had the discussion and I vote to approve.
Marilyn.
I've heard the discussion, I vote to approve.
Christopher.
I've heard the discussion, Chair, and I vote to approve.
And Anjana.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard all the discussion and I vote to approve the application.
Good, so that application is approved unanimously, and I think that that concludes all of the applications that we have to consider this evening. So I'd like to thank you all for your time. There is no any other urgent business to be dealt with, so I conclude the meeting at 20:46. Thank you very much.
Thank you.